Everything since the last time we were here, our last event was monumental, right? So those of you who know me or you know anything about it, you know that we've been working hard to introduce everyone in the community to equity crowdfunding, right? That was the crux of our event last month. We came out, we had the attorney who wrote the law, the first state registered portal owner here. We had 3 presenters here. One of them was from a company called IndieBuild that's building technology products. Another one, Gero Medical, which is a black-owned medical supply company that's been in business for 30 years. And the other one was one called Native Sons of Chicago, which is a real estate-based program that is designed to build and create jobs. And the funding mechanism for that is equity crowdfunding. After that event, we got inundated with folks emailing and calling. People wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to find out what they can do to get involved. So you guys are kind of going to be in that same boat tonight, because after we have our talk with our first guest, we're going to have a second recap of the Native Sons Project from Al Prudhoe. And you guys are definitely going to want to stick around for that. This is what we're talking about is the future of economics throughout the country, throughout the world on one level, but definitely right here in Chicago with what we need in terms of economic development, job creation, and different things. The power to do all of that is right in our hands right now. I've always said it long before our most recent election that it doesn't matter who's in any office, whether it's the mayor, governor, or presidential office, when we have the power to build and provide for our own selves and our economy, we have an opportunity to win. But the only thing we need for that to happen is the engagement of the people who understand what it is. So it's been my work and my commitment to make sure that everyone is educated about what these issues are. One of those elements of this new economy is sharing. It's all about sharing, whether you're dealing with Uber, Lyft, and ride sharing. Some of you used that to get here tonight. I used it to get here tonight and used Uber instead of Lyft tonight to get here. And now we got also home sharing through companies like Airbnb. Some people are very much aware of it, some not so aware. So what I was very fortunate to be able to do, I met a gentleman who was the press secretary for Airbnb at a political fundraiser a little over a month ago. And he put me in contact with a young lady who is the public policy lead for Airbnb. And we started kind of chatting, and she was telling me all these wonderful things about what they do that, I wasn't even really aware of. I knew a lot about it and what they do. I have a lot of folks that are real estate investors. Some of my clients and things are here tonight, and everybody's interested in knowing how they can use that to make money with properties that they're buying and investing in. So she was gracious enough to come out here tonight and join us to talk about that and present Airbnb and make sure you guys understand. And some of what you're going to learn tonight is really, really going to surprise you. So I want you to kind of buckle in, get straight in your seat, and we're going to get this show on the road. So I'm going to introduce Miss M.K. Gamble of Airbnb, our public policy leader. Our guest, come on up. The mic sounds horrible, doesn't it? Let's take it down a notch. And thank you very much, Monica, for being here. All right. So, Airbnb, at the core of what it is home sharing. It gives you an opportunity to rent a room or a whole entire place, an apartment or whatever, or a house or whatever it is, to people that are kind of moving around. So if you ever been to a place like New Buffalo, Union Pier, or even up in Miller, Indiana, these beachfront communities, you would see this type of stuff all the time, where you can go rent a nice house and you and your friends all go up and have a party. But now that's kind of been brought down to the everyday folks that are, throughout our communities, throughout Chicago. So I'd like you to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about who you are, and then what you do with Airbnb.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. I go by the name MK because my first name is so long. My first name is Monica K. Gamble is my last name, so I'm Monica K, or MK. I am the policy lead with Airbnb, and what that means is I do the negotiations with the city and the state currently as far as what regulations exist out there for Airbnb. And I work with a team here in Chicago, a close-knit small team in which we are recruiting new hosts in every area of Chicago. As many of you know, we have 77 neighborhoods here in Chicago. And when you look at tourism There are 140 hotels in the city of Chicago. 100 are in the Loop. And outside of the Loop are 13. And most of them are between the Loop and where we currently are in the current hotel. Now, if you're not in this area and you're traveling in Chicago, you need to stay in a property that's located either downtown or possibly here in Hyde Park. Well, what if you live on 115th Street? What if you live up, like I live far north, Foster and Damon? The best example is last Christmas. I'm not from Chicago. I'm originally from Cleveland. Been here for a while now. That's right, go Cleveland. And what happened was my family wanted to spend the holiday with me at my place, and my place was not big enough. So they stayed in a very nice hotel here in the city. The weather was horrible, and we did dinner out and about in the city. It was the worst Christmas of my life. And I didn't even take the time to think about this, that I could have rented a property, because I just rented one for a dinner outing like earlier that month, where we all could have shared the space and had an opportunity to be together. And so with Airbnb, that's what we're doing, was we're making the city accessible to one to everybody, and then all areas of the city. Chicago is not limited to downtown, River North, Navy Pier, or the Loop, right? So we are one of those interrupter technologies, just like Lyft, Uber, etc. We are bringing home and housing available to everybody, anywhere, and our motto is belong anywhere. Airbnb is in 34,000 jurisdictions. I'm in 200 countries. On top of being in 200 countries, I have people literally, there's 77 neighborhoods in Chicago. I think I'm in 72 right now. And every weekend I'm out there making sure that there are hosts recruiting in every area, from the most popular to the least popular neighborhood you can think of. And not to dominate this conversation, but I wanted to draw your attention to this little neighborhood guidebook, which I put out here. What we do that's relevant to you guys is we are empowering each homeowner or property owner to basically become a small business, right? You can rent out a room, you can rent out the entire property, and people will sign up. When you flip through this little, what we call, this is very, very dated, so it's not the most up-to-date at all, but in Airbnb, when you book a property for that family reunion, for that holiday travel, for that weekend getaway, you're able to spend money locally in the neighborhoods in which you're staying. And currently Airbnb hosts spend 87% of their income in the neighborhood that the property is located. We are bringing real money and change to the city of Chicago. And what we encourage you to do as a host is let these people come into your home and know what's new to you, what's local to you. I apologize. Being that I'm not from Chicago, when I first got here, I thought Chicago was deep dish pizza, Navy Pier, and Millennium Park. That's what I understood, you know, and there's so much more to the city than just that. There are a number of great restaurants out there. What about local coffee houses, art museums, Black-owned businesses, etc. So this is just a printout of when we first came to Chicago in about 2008 or 2009. We gave these out as recommendations. Locate a neighborhood and make recommendations for those people that are staying in your neighborhood to go locally, so they're spending their money locally. In the last year, my person who is hosting the individual, in Chicago, we brought in $120 million was spent in the city of Chicago through Airbnb guests last year. Wow. Out of $120 million spent by my guests, $93 million was spent outside of the Loop. $93 million went into the local neighborhoods to make sure that these small businesses are being invested in, infrastructure is being created, and really creating and driving revenue. And that's exactly what my goal is. With the motto, we say belong anywhere, and that's exactly it. You don't travel to a city to be a tourist. You travel to live, learn, and experience the culture of that city.
So in some of our conversations that we have about equity crowdfunding, the idea is that we use that to build stores, restaurants, could be grocery stores, small mom and pop, like bodega style grocery stores. They could be, entertainment centers where you have live music and different things like that. And so people would always ask the question, who are the patrons of these places going to be? Now, because our effort is designed around raising that money from those same local communities, the idea would be that the people who invest become the patrons. but what do you do beyond that? So now what that means is that in that community, those businesses that are built that way are now the things that you add as a host into your Airbnb profile that makes your property look that much more appealing. So by building those businesses in our communities, we actually increase each other's value as hosts. Is that correct? And I'm kind of just really coming off the top with that, but it's very easy for me to see that for some reason, and I want to make sure that people continue to stay engaged in that. Now, one of the things we talked about, just the oddity of how it started.
Yes.
Because I think the way the thing starts a lot of times says a lot about what can be done with it. As a real estate agent, and we have other agents here, Stacy from my office in Hyde Park is here as well, and a few other folks that deal with real estate. And we are always talking to people who need to find ways to save their home. So they call and say, well, I need to do a short sale, I need to do all these other different things. And to be quite honest with you, relative to what a person has, the quality of their property or what have you, they may not necessarily have to do that anymore. So tell us about the start of Airbnb and kind of how that matches up.
Absolutely. So, 3 guys started out as friends. They went to college together, I believe, and ultimately reconnected in California. I don't know if anybody's been to San Francisco, but is it expensive out there? When I was out there, I was just looking at rents around me. It's about $3,200. Sorry, $3,200 a month for rent.
Wow.
And we're talking about like maybe a 2-bedroom. I have tons of friends from college that are actually out there, and they are stacked up on top of each other out there, even more so than New York, because it's a small space with limited housing. So these guys are out there, and they have a larger apartment, I'm just gonna be honest, 3 young white guys living together, and were about to be evicted because they couldn't make their rent. And they were thinking, what can we do right now to save ourselves from being evicted out of this property that we have and come up with rent money very, very quickly? They realized that there was a big convention coming in. All these tech conferences keep coming through San Francisco, and people are always looking for places to stay, they sell out, etc. And with, San Francisco is basically surrounded by the water, so it really is limited housing, unless you're gonna go over to like Oakland or somewhere else or further, I think it's south is the correct direction, if you're looking for a place to stay. They came up with the idea of, what if we buy 3 air mattresses, contact the conference and see who will be willing to pay to stay on these air mattresses. We pick them up from the airport and we invite and welcome them into our house. Kind of like what they do in Europe. And we don't think about this too often. Treat it like an exchange student, right? Really embrace somebody. And go out on trust that this person is not gonna be crazy, they're not gonna rob you, and not do anything ridiculous, And for years, our company successfully existed strictly on mankind's belief in one another. Now, we do have tools in place now to protect you, and I'll explain a little bit more about that, because that's usually the first hesitation is, why would I let this person in my house and how am I protected? So these 3 guys put out these advertisements, and they got I'm just gonna be guessing looking at the pictures. First off, they had the wherewithal to film everything, kind of like you're doing now, and capture pictures. They got a Middle Eastern man willing to stay, a woman maybe in her 40 to 45 years old, mother, and then a younger kind of millennial age, I believe, guy. All 3 stayed there. They picked them up from the airport, they brought them in, and it was air bed and breakfast is what this was called. And they gave them cereal and milk. These are 3 guys that are broke, right? So, and they're like, hey, welcome to breakfast. They took them to the conference, they laughed and joked, and they filmed all this. So this is not like just a selling point. When you go to headquarters, I'm looking at the actual video and footage, and I'm in a 5-story kind of warehouse, and there's this photo that's about as big as this room of the Indian guy sitting there cross-legged on the air mattress, pouring milk into his bowl, laughing with the people in the background. And through that weekend, or maybe it was a week that they were together, they start moving their air mattresses together because they were just living in a living room. And it became like an adult slumber party. They laughed, they joked, they made the money to stay in their property, and they realized, you know what, I'm not trying to be the next Travelocity, and I'm not trying to just be out here for as an alternative to Priceline or whatever else. We want to make the world a smaller place, and we want people to have faith in mankind again. And that's exactly what they've been doing ever since then, and why we're so ingrained in communities and building up the marginalized areas of every neighborhood everywhere. I'm gonna give you just the website, it's airbnb.com. I want you to tune in at Thursday at 10 a.m. We're about to announce some things that are gonna revolutionize travel home sharing and everything else. I just can't share it with you right now, especially since we're filming, but just look at what's going to happen and what we're doing differently. Just so you know a little bit about this company and why I'm here. I told you my name is Monica K, and I'm pretty adamant about it. Monica K or MK. My father passed when I was 15, and he died of cancer. And that's kind of hard. I'm the oldest in the family. My mom's working day and nights to pay for him. My brother is a knucklehead. He's a 13-year-old boy at the time. And I'm traveling with him to get his care and treatment. He passes. And since then, I wear his necklaces every day. And I make sure you call me Monica K or MK. I will not accept Monica because of that, because he was pretty adamant about it. Wow, how is that relevant? Airbnb, unfortunately, does a poor job advertising the great things they do. If you're receiving cancer treatment far away from your house, and this actually happened with Brian Chesnick, one of the founders, we reach out to our hosts and ask them to open up their homes to let you stay. Because if you're doing 4 hours of chemo, 3 hours of travel each way, that's 10 hours. Stressful. And you're already sick with a compromised immune system. Personally, I didn't graduate 10th grade traveling with my father. My school was generous enough to allow me to move on to the 11th grade, even though I had one of the highest GPAs and like 8 full rides to college. But I never graduated 10th grade officially because I didn't stay long enough in school because I traveled with my dad to make sure he got treatment. So if I'm passionate about this organization, this is only one of the reasons why. It is a truly generous organization that wants to give help and better the world in hopes that people will open up their houses and hearts. Now let's talk about how to actually do that, right? This is your house, and there are some people out there that you might not feel comfortable letting in or whatever else. Airbnb gives you $1 million insurance from day one. So if you sign up, your property's covered. And that's before your property insurance and everything else kicks in. So let's say I stay at your house, I break a table, or I steal your car, something really absurd, right? It's covered. We insure you because you're on our platform, you're our host, you're our guest. That's the first thing. We also have 5 layers of background check, which is pretty in-depth. I know you guys don't necessarily want to know all this, but I think this is relevant if you ask me. If I'm a homeowner, I want to know who's coming in. When I stay in somebody's home, Airbnb, now the person doesn't get this information, has my driver license on record. You either have to, if you go through all 5 levels of registration with Airbnb, and you can choose to only have people that have all 5 layers completed. So if something bad were to happen, knock on wood, they don't, we have that information that we can provide to the authorities, to you, to whomever else. You're already covered, like I said, you have $1 million insurance on your property. That's one thing. Second thing is we use the peer system. I stay in your property, you write a review on me just like your Lyft driver does or Uber driver. So every time somebody else wants to let me in their house, they're gonna read these comments about how I was as a guest. And vice versa, I get to write about your property. And that's how we kind of self-regulate, not to mention all Airbnb guests have to, not guests, but employees, we have to travel on Airbnb, and we do travel around the world, so. When I travel for work, I'm staying in someone's Airbnb, and I've stayed in some incredible places very, very affordably. Very nice.
Wow. Now, we also talked about, one of the more difficult parts of that conversation is that, I don't remember if it was earlier this year or last year when the case about discrimination came up. And they were talking about the fact that there were hosts who would essentially take a look at your picture and decide, I don't like that person because, could be because you're black, it could be because of any other reason, but they just essentially don't like the way you look, and that they would deny you when it's clear to you that the place is available to be rented. You might have a good rating as a host, and so you might feel like this person has no reason not to accept your request other than some other reason. What is it that Airbnb has done to deal with that? It was a big firestorm about that for a little while. Tell us a little bit about how you guys work to quell that for one, and what safeguards we have as guests for one, and what safeguard, or what, I guess, onus is on the host for that.
This is very interesting. Airbnb was struggling with, how do we regulate who you let in your home? Because it's your home, right? And you have to feel safe in your home. I also have I believe my fastest growing population of hosts are women 65 years and older. And that's because in some instances they're widowed, they have a property that's paid for, they have plenty of space, and they're looking for some extra income, maybe companionship, whatever else, right? So how am I, when I look at this, I'm not just thinking about my average Joe Blow millennial who's actually traveling on Airbnb, and my average host age is not the younger people who kind of work for me, actually. It's, to be honest, families and people that are just generally older. How do I tell you who you can let in your home? You cannot. At the same time, you have to protect the guest who is using our platform and wants to be a part of it. So Airbnb tried to take a comprehensive approach, and they did a lot of things. It was a very multifaceted approach. The first being, they brought on Eric Holder to come in and look at all our policies, our protocols, our marketing, our advertising, and what can we really do? I mean, you're bringing Eric Holder into the private sector here and having him go through the company, interview people, and get candid, honest responses from people. And I thought that was profound. We also put out a comprehensive discrimination report. One, I have copies here with me if you'd like to read it. It is thorough. But we're working with a tech company, and the fastest way to solve a tech issue is with technology itself. So knowing that anybody who goes on Airbnb usually will have a 50% decline rate. It's just because whoever, maybe the guest doesn't want to do it, maybe they want only men, maybe they only want women, whatever else. It's just, people have to be comfortable in their home. So knowing that everybody is going to experience this 50% rate, they came up with something called Instant Book. So me as a host, or a guest, if I go on Airbnb, there'll be a little lightning bolt and a bright red button. And you go to that listing and you just click on it, and no one has to say yes or no to you coming. They're saying, I'm open to everybody being there. And that was the first thing we did. So we looked at it from a technology standpoint, we looked at it from an internal analysis and what we could do better. We're constantly weighing in. I started in July, and one of the first things I did when I got to headquarters, sitting down, eating my lunch, minding my business, was, hey, what can we do to make this better? What have you seen? You're new. And they're constantly trying to learn and understanding that the reality is that 3 very smart, well-off white guys who are about late 30s, early 40s are running this company. They're pretty homogenous, right? Like in their ages and everything else. So they're trying to make sure that they have diversity throughout the company and in feedback and the shareholders and the businesses, et cetera. And it's through that same diversity in age, gender, race, et cetera, that people feel safe. Now, something that we don't think about initially, because we're looking at it as a minority traveling on the site. What am I dealing with? I also have to protect my LGBTQ, and I think I is a new initial added to it, community as well. Because in some countries, it is prohibited to have your sexual preference, right? And I still have to protect these individuals traveling. So we're even working through tools to make sure that these individuals are safe and protected as they travel together. And we're still monitoring exchanges, communications, acceptance rates, denial rates, and trying to find trends, because your profile doesn't identify you by the race or gender, et cetera. That's not, we're not in the business of you identifying yourself that way. All we want to care about is you're the person who said that this is the profile and you want to travel and you're going to be a part of my network. So they really took this belong anywhere and approached it from such a different standpoint. And my last comment I want to say about this is my first day in Airbnb blew my mind. I used to work at the State's Attorney's Office. I was one of the head lobbyists for Anita Alvarez before this. I loved my job, I liked what I did, and I negotiated and helped write most of the criminal laws for the last 4 years for the state of Illinois. But that day, I had put in my 2 weeks notice, left, touched down in San Francisco, take a lift to Airbnb, and I walk into a 5-story building, which I've told you about. And wrapped around these kind of pillars that go through the entire unit. Well, let me back up. When you first walk through, there's a little thing above the doorway of each handle that says, you belong here. That little comment means a lot, right? You walk in, you're stressed, you're new, and you feel like, wow, I'm supposed to be here. Then over 3 of those 5 floors, there are 200 photos that are about as big as this, where people who were outraged at what was happening to young black men by the police in the United States took pictures with signs they made that said, like, my silence is acquiescence, Black Lives Matter, whatever it was that they wanted to share. And people of all races, gender, ethnicities, ages, etc. 200 of our 2,400 employees took these pictures, and then it was wrapped around the entire building for everybody to see and confront, whether you believed in it or not. This was a place for people to feel accepted and to know that someone is here for you, and to know that while you might feel vulnerable and uneasy out in the world, here, you will belong anywhere. And so that was very important to me.
Excellent. Now, when I met Ben, Ben is the press secretary for Airbnb. He's the gentleman I met, for those of you who didn't hear that on the front end. You know, we were just having this casual little conversation. I'm like, yeah, well, you know, I'm sure that's hot down in Wrigleyville and this and that. And we were talking about the nice areas. He said, man, let me stop you right there. He said, you would be surprised at the money people are making in some of the more, what you might think are some of the more obscure or worst neighborhoods. Tell us a little bit about the way that the money, if you will, is spreading through some of our more challenged communities with hosts there that are really taking it on and embracing it.
A few weeks back, a couple Sundays ago, I did the Inglewood 5K. I was not familiar with the 5K that they had out in Inglewood, and I went. It was incredible. Great race, good people, beautiful park. I enjoyed it. I knew I had 6 people in Inglewood that were currently hosts out that way. And as I sat at that table, and we had someone stay there for 4 to 5, no, probably 6 hours, I had more people signing up and inquiring about what we have, where we are, what we're doing. My last data report, and I apologize, I'm coming off of a negotiation at City Hall, so I'm a little still stuck in that mode right now, but in my backpack, my numbers I think are 1,000 on the west side of Chicago and right about close to, well, 1,200 south west side and about 1,000 on the south side. Hosts that exist. This is not Wrigleyville, it's not Lakeview. I'm not even really, I mean, I have those numbers, but I'm not really tracking it. For the World Series, and you guys were killing my Indians, $2.6 million were made by hosts here. Wow. During games 3 and 4 only. $2.6 million. Like I said, and that's from my guests. That's not even from the hotel industry. And like I said, my guests self-report 87% of the income that they spend on a trip stays where they are. That's a lot of money. And something else I don't talk about, and I'm not sure why the city has not said anything about it yet, but I'm going to put it out there. We negotiated the housing tax. There needs to be parity between hotels and us. We understand that, right? We shouldn't be given any favors, even though we believe we're very different than hotels, and we're not even really competing for the business, because if you want a hotel, you're gonna stay in a hotel, to be quite honest. If you want a house and a kitchen and a pool and a crib and everything else, you're probably gonna stay in an Airbnb. And that's just the reality of it. But I believe last quarter, $270,000 in taxes were collected just from our guests. And then I'm assuming probably another $270,000 before this year is over. So it's gonna be about $600,000 in taxes collected. What Airbnb is doing differently that others are not, we have negotiated that money goes to permanent and transitional housing for the homeless in Chicago. There's a real problem with homelessness in Chicago. Airbnb is a civically engaged and very conscientious organization. I am the head of we kind of have mandatory community service. You will not come in like a normal tech company, make a killing and leave. Every day, every week we have new classes of people coming in, Facebook, Yelp, Airbnb, we are Airbnb, but all the other organizations. People transitioning over to us because they want to be a part of this, where we have work-life balance, but most importantly, you have to be an entrepreneur and you have to see opportunities to help and build a community. And additionally, you have to give back. So I'm in charge of the Chicago office, community service, and where we go, what we do. And if anybody is, if you're in need of people to come out and serve, let me know, I can add you to my list. But we really work with the community and making sure that we give back and that we're helping throughout, like I said, Chicago. Our goal here is to help every marginalized community and to be in all 77 neighborhoods. Hopefully I will have that within 1 year's time of being here. And you guys, I'm sure, if any of you use Airbnb, you will actually know the faces of my team that are out here. The people that come and meet you, and like, for instance, like Ben. Ben's a great guy, the press secretary. Yeah.
Yeah, really nice guy. So now, investment, property. People who are acquiring properties for real estate investment, Chicago has a robust stock right now of condominiums in South Shore, great housing in South Shore, really throughout the city. And so a lot of people, when I'm talking to them now, we're talking about this as a kind of an additional way that people can make money with the properties that they invest in. Are you getting a lot of activity? I'm sure you guys are tracking, or are you tracking how many of these are actually being stayed in investment properties versus the host that is hosting in his own house?
Yes, so let me also be clear. What you cannot do by the law that we negotiated is let's say I own three buildings, I can't Airbnb all 3 of those buildings out. You can Airbnb out the property in which you live in. You can't run like a pseudo hotel. That's what the city is really pushing back on, right? And that's for a number of reasons, really think about it, because you don't have the same fire regulations, you don't have all that stuff in place to really be running a hotel, and like you can put someone in jeopardy, not intentionally. So it's something to protect you, it's something to protect us, and there's only certain things that our insurance are gonna be able to cover anyway, so that's one issue. South Shore is a very, very growing area. If you guys, the same guy who runs Hyde Park, Jared, a young black guy, lives in South Shore. He's helping to build up my economy down there. I think I have 88 hosts down there. And yes, this is an opportunity. I track people who rent the whole house out and then people who rent out the one room or multiple rooms. Let's say you have a 3-bedroom house and you have 2 available rooms. You can list it for 1 room, 2 rooms, or the entire property. You list it as you want. You set your price, you control it. You say how often you want to use it. My average person in Chicago rents their property out 4 days a month, and that's it. Usually in a one time frame block. And then they do that once a month, and they make about $4,300 extra dollars. Last year, 900 people that I know of were in active foreclosure, and I was able to help them get out. Well, Airbnb was able to actively get them out of foreclosure, which is outstanding. Prior to this, I used to be a foreclosure attorney, and that's a hard field. These people are losing their homes. Like, no one likes doing it. I don't even think the bank attorneys really like doing it. But yeah, so this is an opportunity to help individuals. And actually, if you look at this little handout I gave you at the very bottom here, if you picked it up, 53% of our people are using Airbnb to help pay increasing property taxes, etc., and 48% just to make their rent payments each month. It really is about helping people pay their bills and live comfortably. And I think one of the best stories, which we didn't even advertise, we just found out, Univision did a story on one woman who works at Airbnb. She lives in Humboldt Park. She has a property. She has a son in college. She's also a beautician. She rents out his room only, and I don't think she does it every week or weekend. She just does it occasionally, and that money she uses for that is actually paying for his tuition for college. And she's a like I said, she has her own hair salon and everything else, and that's actually wonderful to help her through that. As we know, the government's cutting back on funding, so that's kind of what we're doing. We're here to help people make ends meet, and you're never going to really see me. I don't want to say that I'm not invested in the Loop and the Gold Coast and those places, but those places are thriving and doing well already. So.
All right, great. We're going to open up the floor for just a couple of questions, and then we'll move forward real quick. We're going to take 2 now, and then we'll do the rest after our next presenter. Go, Lee.
How you doing? My name is Lee Farmer. I'm an Airbnb host. I have a condo host. Due to the legislation that's happening in New York and San Francisco, it's kind of alarming to a host like me, seeing that they're cutting down to like 60 days and 90 days. In San Francisco, you let you rent out 1 room in your house. So what are you guys planning to do to fight against that kind of like restrictive legislation in these cities?
I'm glad you asked. I literally just came from City Hall. That's, if you saw me when I came in, I have a backpack here. Well, I definitely can't talk about a lot of things for a number of reasons, because it's closed door negotiations. Chicago is not going to be that restrictive, and we also don't have the same housing issues, and we don't have the housing shortages that they have. So currently, the only real, I'm not going to say the only real restriction, but our restriction is more on, like, if you're in a large condo building, there might be caps on how many people in the condo building can lease out, but so far there's no day restrictions. It's not, New York is going to be very unique just because of New York has a very interesting dynamic, and San Francisco is very unique also just because of the space issue that's right there. So you should not anticipate seeing that in Chicago, but I am actively negotiating. That's my job, policy lead. I make sure I have a lobbyist team where I'm there weekly. You'll see me all the time in City Hall walking around, and making sure that I'm protecting my host, my guest, and Chicago stays accessible. And we need more people like you too. We want, if you get these invites from us for emails that come out for aldermen or whoever else, make sure you show up. Like, that really is helpful, because they see it as I'm getting a paycheck to protect you, or I'm as self-interested. When they see you out there, then they know that you're really interested in your area and your community. And that's what we're trying to do, is mobilize you guys and make sure you're good. So I am looking out for you.
In the SBAC, by the way, we advocate for the rights of small business owners each and every day throughout this state without fail. Each one of you that is an Airbnb host is viewed by us as a small business owner, so we welcome you to join us and bring that issue to our policy committee so we can assist in that lobby. We can work with Airbnb, formulate proposals that we can help to take back to the city and use that collective voice that we've been building for the last 6 or so years, and then we can all join together and make that a much more powerful presentation with what you have there. Yes, sir, in the back.
My name is Zed Fayer, and I would like to point one thing. My friends and I, we use Airbnb, and there's one thing that comes back all the time. If you are looking, you don't know if you're going to Belgrade.
Yes.
You're looking at the internet and you're looking at houses. Oh, beautiful pictures, beautiful. What a bedroom! What a great bed, king size. You come to the place. Actually, it's not what's in the picture.
I'm glad you brought that up, and that's actually very, very important. So for me, there's two things I always tell everybody, and it's perfect to use Belgrade and those international travel things, because it's harder for us to regulate it in countries where there's not a headquarters, right, to a certain extent. So what we do with Airbnb, if you put your property up, you get a free photographer sent out to your property to take the picture, and the pictures are then verified by the photographer. And we encourage people to pick properties that have been verified by the photographer, instead of me just taking it on my own property on my smartphone, because there's no real check and balance because it is somebody's house, right? So we cannot, I have 2.2 million properties as of this morning on Airbnb. There's only 2,400 of us. So we can't individually make it out to each, but we encourage people, make sure, one, that it should look different. It should look professional to you. It should look better. Does it make sense? It should look better than an actual camera phone, but I think it actually says verified by photographer on the bottom. My Airbnb, if I log onto Airbnb now, it looks different for me than for you guys because I'm an employee, right? So my computer's registered, so I don't necessarily see everything you guys see. I see it differently. But that's the first thing. And the second thing is, if you have an issue, make sure you communicate it on the platform. When those emails are going back and forth, even if you have their cell phone number, their personal email, keep it on my platform. When you're going back and forth like that, after a certain amount of time, it will often trigger what we call a relocation team, and somebody has access to the back end of the website, and they're saying, wait a minute, this person's supposed to be checked in. There's a lot of emails going back and forth. Why? And it flags them and sends it to somebody who's looking. And there have been plenty of times we've had to relocate people, one for safety, one for whatever the issue may be. And it is harder in some of the smaller countries, I hate to say it, or more rural areas. That is very, very true. You let us know and make sure you keep it on the platform, because what we do that's different than anybody else with Airbnb, we actually hold your money. So you pay me for my property, that money doesn't go directly to me. It stays at Airbnb for 24 hours. And that gives you 24 hours to let us know there's a real issue with it, and then we won't release the money to that person until it's investigated. And we'll keep that money there. Other platforms do not do that. When you pay them, you're paying them. So if you book it a year in advance, 2 months in advance, a day in advance, they've gotten your money. Airbnb, they do not get that money until 24 hours after check-in. But we'll definitely follow up a little bit more afterwards.
So the reviews are really accurate too, so that's...
Yes, the reviews.
Check the reviews.
We're gonna, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna hold the other questions to the end of the program. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna move into the next segment of the program. It's a little bit different, but quite relatable once you take a look at what we're gonna be talking about next. Our next guest is a gentleman by the name of Al Prudhoe. Al Prudhoe is the owner of Pierpoint Capital, which you see up on the board there as well, and also the founder of Native Sons of Chicago. Native Sons of Chicago is a company that's gonna be working and using equity crowdfunding as a platform by which we can work to build jobs and create housing opportunities in our communities for veterans and others, many of whom would also be using Airbnb and getting on those platforms. So we're gonna bring Al up, he's gonna make a brief presentation, and then we're gonna bring Monica back up with Al for more questions, okay? Thank you. Give Monica a round of applause, everybody. Thank you. Monica K, I'm sorry, Monica K, excuse me, I don't wanna get ready, I don't wanna get hit on that. So come on up, Al. Okay.
Can everybody hear me? I usually have one of those voices that kind of carries. So everybody good in the back? You're good? All right, cool. How many people were here last month? So probably a little less than half of the room. So I gave a full presentation on native son, but just to give those people that weren't here just a quick, brief understanding of who Al Perdeau is. Al Perdeau owns Pierpoint Capital, which does a lot of financing for businesses, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and a lot of real estate loans. A lot of rehab loans, commercial lending, things like that. I've been doing it for a number of years now. Prior to that, I was one of the housing development officers for the city of Chicago. My projects were the redevelopment of Robert Taylor, Stateway, Madden Wells, and a variety of those. And if you're here for my last presentation, I told you as rewarding as it was from a finance professional standpoint, looking at all the numbers and all the zeros that kind of trailed all my budgets. One of the things, I grew up on 35th and King Drive. I'm a Bronzeville boy at heart. And one of the things that I noticed was all those big budgets that I was approving and implementing, none of those dollars were trickling back to us. A lot of things were coming down, a lot of people were out, there was a lot of busy work going on, but there wasn't a lot of money trickling back to us. So when I started Pierpoint Capital, I wanted to kind of address that. I wanted to fund projects in our neighborhood for our people. Now, a year ago, I was approached with a name like Pierpoint, you can imagine. There was a new wave of crowdfunding sweeping the area. And not the crowdfunding that you're probably used to, the Kickstarter where you donate a little bit of money, or maybe I have the new iPhone cover and you give me 10, 15, 20 bucks and I make a bunch of them and I send you one when it's done. This is equity crowdfunding. This is, we have a legit project. Think of it like a Goldman Sachs for the people. We put a project together, or a project is put together, and you get the profit from it. And so when we did this, we said to ourselves, okay, well, what's the best way to approach this? Because, half of my business is real estate developing, finance. The other half is business development. So we said, okay, what if we took two of the most challenging areas of the city and poured money into those initiatives? And that's kind of what this presentation is based. I got part two. If you sat through my presentation last month, a little similar, a little different, but we'll catch everybody up. So, it's been a while since we talked. The last time we talked, I believe the Cubs were playing, so people weren't here for that. And there was the third debate of the presidential election. So a lot's happened since then, since the last we met. Did I mention the Cubs won?
Yeah.
Cubs won?
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. So our mission isn't just to make a lot of money. Ours is to legitimately generate a profit for the investors, rebuild local economies, and stabilize communities. Now, when I spoke last time, we gave the analogy of Tulsa in the 1920s. For those of you that may not know or weren't here for the last presentation, during, what you want to call it, Reconstruction maybe? I don't know, whatever it was. When you were freed finally as a slave, they told you, everybody said, move to the north, move to the north. But like Brother Malcolm used to always say, if you're south of the Canadian border, you're in the south. So a lot of our people went west. And they said, well, I don't know why you're going west, because the only thing out there are the Indians, and they're going to kill you, and there's no reason for you to go out there. So we said, all right, cool, and we know how that history went. Now, we didn't have TIF. We didn't have subsidies. We didn't have anything. We had us and the Indians. So when we had to do something, when Grandpa had to do something, he started his own businesses. And not only did he start his own businesses, his neighbor started his own businesses. Much like we're getting a revival of now. And so when I needed something, not only did I know where to go, I knew the people that sold it to me. And so we said to ourselves, okay, so what's the perfect business relationship? The perfect business relationship is a community where the local residents support the local businesses, and in turn, those local businesses hire the local residents. Now you have your economy, right? I'll tell you what, I'm 47 years old. Actually, my very first job, 15 years old. I worked at McDonald's on 53rd and Kenwood. A friend of the family owned it. I was too young to even work, but a friend of the family. I have never, aside from that job, ever worked in the community. I've always worked downtown. I've worked in New York, I've worked all over, but I've never worked in a community, right? So where do I spend my money? When I go to lunch, I'm starving. Where do I spend my money? Downtown. I work too late. I have to grab a quick bite to eat at dinner. Where do I go? I have a headache. Oh my God, I have to go to the pharmacy. Where do I go? Downtown. So I gave this presentation last month, and rousing, you know, everybody was all for it. People kept coming to me like, oh my God, like I can't believe you guys are going into Auburn, Gresham. You guys are going into you know, all these neighborhoods. It's great because now we have this new South Side. And I was like, what do you mean by the new South Side? Oh, well, we have a Starbucks now, we have a Whole Foods, we have a Mariano's, and we have a Chipotle. I've never seen people so excited over Chipotle. Chipotle, there's Chipotle around the corner. But when they opened the Chipotle in Inglewood, you'd have thought they were passing out gold burritos, you know? So, you know, I'm kind of going into this whole thing of, okay, well, isn't that where we just came from? Where I pay $7 for a latte, pay $90 for some grapes, and I get my burrito. How does that cycle back to us? Right? And then somebody else approached me. They were like, well, you know, I was listening to, I forget the guy's name right now, but he was telling, you know, for Christmas, we should need to just buy stock for our kids. You know, so if we eat at we drink at Starbucks, we should buy some Starbucks shares. If we, you know, do the same for Whole Foods. And I said, really? 'Cause I used to be an investment banker, my first life. I said, really? Let's check out Chipotle, since everybody's loving Chipotle. Had you bought it this time last year,
Not good.
you'd have paid $5.88. If you sold it at what, $11.34 today, you'd have only lost 31%. So you say to yourself, well, Al, why would I invest in you? I probably won't do that bad. Okay? So, getting back to what we do. And the last time we did a simple real estate transaction because everybody understands real estate. What Native Sons is positioned to do, we will be the principal in a lot of activities. We will also be a partner in a lot of activities. So, walk you through the same transaction we did before, although now my Airbnb people have a little twist to it. Take a simple transaction. 3-unit building in our neighborhood. Let's just say this is a non-gentrified neighborhood. We haven't quite made it there yet, as far as gentrification. I know we don't see too many of these buildings in our neighborhoods that often, you know. So, let's say I was able to get this for $20,000 from the city because they were either going to tear it down or, well, you know, it's on the demo list. So, let's just say I had to put $150,000 into this building, right? When I did, I paid about $16,000 in closing costs, and I sell it for $230,000. Good job, right? I made a whopping profit of $64,000. So remember what my mission was. My mission was to generate profits for the investor. I did, $64,000, right? But that's not it, because I could do that without you. You know? I also want to rebuild the local economy. And I also want to stabilize the community. So how do I rebuild the local economy? And we said, what if we hired local? Right? Because either way it goes, I have to hire an architect, I have to hire electricians, plumbers, and the whole gamut, right? both skilled and unskilled labor. Now, for the skilled part, that kind of comes with the business. If you own if you're an electrician, you have an electrical company, which you are, we see, you know, you already have your people. What if I told you to get this contract, I want you to take on one apprentice. One apprentice that's that same guy on the corner that everybody's scared of, that's somebody's son that nobody's got control over, who you think wants to stay on the corner, but would probably take that money that you're giving him as an apprentice to learn a skill, to learn a trade, because on the back end, we're going to fund your business and we're going to fund him to open up his own business down the road. Now, for each business that we hire, let's say there's 2 people that are skilled, so you and your guy, and 1 extra guy. Not that big of a deal. It's like a 2-man shop. They bring on 1 guy as an architect. He's in training, he's an apprentice, good job. Same with our electricians, same with our plumbers, on down the line, right? So now, in addition to all the just one-off apprentice, we also have 5 regular unskilled laborers. These are the guys that you say, listen, take out the trash, do the demo, you like tearing stuff up anyway, tear this up for me, and I'll pay you daily, weekly, however you want to pay. Now once you do that, you say to yourself, wait a minute, we just use 9 local businesses, 19 skilled workers that are collecting a paycheck, and 13 guys off the corner. That's a big corner. That corner's wiped. Now you got to go on to the next corner because you can't find any people to do it. But of course, where am I? You got to be mortgage people in there? My mortgage, my real estate people in the back. Can't forget about you guys. We also have a listing agent, we have a buying agent. On down the road, the appraisers, the lawyers, everybody eats off of these deals, right? So now we have 8 additional firms, bringing our total to 37 people, all affected by 1 project. Oh, but I forgot to mention the crowd, the investors. The investors get their share of the profit. So even if you weren't an electrician, even if you weren't an architect, a mortgage person, you have the potential to profit from the deal, right? So every time you walk past that building, you can tell somebody that's part of like I own part of that building. All right, so how do we build so let's kind of circle back for a second. We made a profit for the investors, $64,000. We re-energized the economy, right? Remember the third part. The third part was to build a stable community. So I want you to meet Joe, our veteran. Now look, we have a kind of a side deal with the Veterans Administration where we can house veterans and we get vouchers and all that kind of stuff. So if you ever hear me talk about veterans, that's kind of full disclosure. So Joe wants to buy my building because it's 3-unit building. We really tricked out the master unit. And we did some nice finishes for the top unit. We only had $150,000. What you gonna do, right? So he actually bought his building with a 100% voucher because they get the 100% voucher from the VA. His monthly payment, PITM, tax and insurance, about $1,600 bucks a month. We help him with the 2 VASH vouchers, which actually pay a premium to Section 8, come directly from the government. Let's just say $1,100 a month. It's actually a little bit more. Let's just say $1,100 a month on that one. So now not only do we inject $150,000 into the local business economy, we inject another $634 into the local economy. So this is money this guy wakes up with every month and spends on whatever, incidentals. But I can't give this presentation following that lovely presentation without saying, well, what if we do it with Airbnb? Same guy Joe, same purchase price, same thing, but what if, let's say, you know what, I'm a veteran, but you know what, I don't really want a bunch of veterans in my building. I'm actually cool with having this really big building where I just have people there occasionally, right? So not even 30 days, not even, you know, every day. Let's just say 20 days out of the month. Someone comes in and I'm in a challenging neighborhood. This is up and coming. It's up and coming. So we're only doing $55 a day. Now, I've stayed at Airbnbs that were on both spectrums. I've stayed at a couple $50 Airbnbs that I was like, couldn't wait to get out of. And I've stayed at a couple that were like, you know, triple, quadruple that were much nicer. Let's just say his is $55 a day. He's making the exact same amount of money. So whether you want to go the subsidized veteran route, or if you want to go the Airbnb route, or a combination of the two, still make the same and you still get the reap the reward. So let's kind of like break this down one more time. We have our 3-unit building that was blighted, that's not blighted anymore. We have just created revenue for 17 local businesses. I'm sorry, I'm seeing some of my screen that I'm not seeing on the Jumbotron. We create opportunities for 13 people with no skills. No skills. So here's the thing. If you ever, and whether you support Native Sons or not, don't ever come to anyone and say, complain about those guys you see on the corner. Saying they have no opportunity, I wish they had this, I wish they had that, because projects like this, that's one building. That's 13 people. What happens when we have 50 of these buildings, 100 of these buildings?
Nobody's standing on the corners.
Right, nobody standing on the corners. Again, 115 to the economy, 600 in current revenue. We provided, obviously we provided the investors with a return. And here's the most important part that I don't think I really stressed the last time I was here. And I'll tell you this. Again, going back to the first part of my presentation, I approved TIF, tax credits, syndications, all that stuff to rebuild our communities. And no one from our communities got those money. Now you pay the taxes. If you move back in that community, you pay the taxes, thank you so much. And I will tell you this, and I'm going off script a little bit here. One of the worst kept secrets on the street now is this $100 million that's floating around from Summers group from the city. Actually got approved in the city council today. They're going to inject $100 million into the neighborhood, into projects, into businesses. God bless them. I hope they do. I hope it finds its way. It never usually finds its way to the right people, but let's just say it finds its way to the right people. You don't need that. Grandpa didn't have that. The guys in Tulsa didn't have that. They had you. They had you. You know, so we don't need the charity. We don't need the donations. We just need to stand with each other. So, again, we had talked about it before, and if you were here for the last one, you know, this is all well and good, but what if, there's a couple things that need to happen. We need to have the legal structure in place. Well, it is. We need to have the technology in place. Well, we actually do. We have the portal Veslo, which is just one of many of the other portals that I'm sure are going to be coming. There's always going to be competition. There's always going to be some push and pull, but as of right now, that's our go-to. Profitable products or projects. We have them. We're ready to go. Shovel-ready projects. But now, what if there are other industries? Everybody needs like some sort of social proof that what I'm talking about is correct. Like I'm not just off on some tangent here. You have Airbnb. You have Airbnb and you have a slew of other companies that are the same. They call themselves disruptors. Disruptors from the standpoint that, they won't hire me, a yellow cab or it used to be checker cab back in the day. The racist, they only hire this ethnicity. Really? Well, grab your car and your keys, sign up with Uber. You work whenever you want to work. Airbnb, my home, I'm opening my home to wherever I want to. When I was younger, we used to always play Monopoly, and I said, man, one day I want to open up that hotel. I had those 4 houses, I want that hotel. My house is a hotel. That bedroom that I kicked the kids out of when I went to college, make a little money. I'll tell you what, I'm getting off point. I'm gonna try to wrap it up real soon. My son's a senior at Southern Methodist University down in Dallas. And he and his roommates, there's 2 roommates, so there's 3 of them all together. they get this really, really nice, much better than when I was in college, really nice apartment that's in one of those, because it's Dallas, so Dallas kind of spread out and all that kind of stuff like that. So they have a swimming pool, a fitness center, like everything, like a little fountain. I'm like, you know, like, am I paying for this? Like, well, how is this getting translated? I was like, yeah, no, Dad, don't even worry about it, I got it. I'm like, you broke, how you got it? So what these guys do, which, you know, whatever it's worth, a couple, they'll have girlfriends. Couple weekends a month, they stay with their girlfriends and rent out the house, the entire house with swimming pool and all the amenities, Airbnb. And I won't even tell you how much they make off. They rent out the entire apartment. So just like you guys, when I go to a place, I rent out a room. They rent out the entire 3-bedroom apartment, which comes with a premium, right? I don't know if you know, SMU is in a Highland Park area of Dallas, which is where George W. Bush lives. So it's a, you know, kind of, trust me, it's way too much money. So to wrap everything up, the Native Sons Project is a 5-year project, okay? We are doing a very small initial raise just because I know my people. We need proof of concept. We need a victory before we go all in. Because otherwise we're investing in Chipotle and we're losing 30% of our money. You know, so before you'd rather lose your 30% of your money than to come on board with someone you don't know. So we want to give you some successes. So we're going to give you some really good successes, hopefully give you some very good returns. And over the course of the 5 years, if everything plays out the way it is, with leverage and with equity, it's going to be a $100 million project. So it's very good. And people always ask me, why 5 years? Why isn't this, you know, going on forever? Well, because 5 years will be the 100th anniversary of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Right? Now, again, if you want to go with Native Sons, by all means, I would love for you to do it. But if you don't, in 5 years, in 1,657 days, June 1st, 2021 is going to be here. And I want you to say that your community is in a better place financially. You have a better economy in your own neighborhood than these guys did 100 years ago, 95 years ago, I'm sorry. Right? So that is all I have. If you have any questions, I'm around. I think I answered most of the questions last time, but I'm always here to answer more questions for you.
We're gonna bring Monica K back up and open the floor back up for questions. And I just want to say to everybody in the room, the most important thing in that we heard tonight from Al on that side, and even from MK, is that these are all things that you get to do on your own. The approval is already there. It is a state law that we can use equity crowdfunding to raise these monies in our communities. And there's no money needed from a bank. We don't have to, so there's no more redlining and discrimination. That's over with. So it's up to us. It's as soon as we decide. So those young men that you work with, TJ, that you're working so hard to build and bring up, this is how we employ them. This is what it's going to take. But it's going to take the community saying, you know what, I'll put $500 in that. I'll convert my stunt budget for the weekend over to a project like Native Sons. I'll stay out of the club this weekend and put 100. Some of these projects, not necessarily this one, but some of them will start with an ask of as little as $100. So the multiplicity of that is how we add that up. So the only thing you need here is unity. So in a speech I heard the minister give a couple of weeks ago, he was talking about Chinatown. And he said, when you go to Chinatown, you see Chinese restaurants, Chinese stores, bustling community is great. You go in, people are employed, they're working, mostly Chinese. How many state representatives do they have in government? In the state of Illinois Assembly, do you know the answer to that? Right, but he's not Chinese is what it was the point, right? So
They've invested in a few.
right, they the community, and they create value that drives you there. that drives me there. And my daughter loves trying to go down and eat in nice restaurants and stuff like that. But there's nothing to stop you from building that according to your own ideas within your own community. So I'm going to continue to push that. Now, how many people here have business cards with them? I want you to pull your business card out, leave it on the chair that you're sitting in. I'll collect that business card. Your name will be added to a group of folks that when we get started doing this, we're going to be asking you. And if you call yourself a friend of mine and you're not in on this, then don't call me asking for Lee Farmer's number because you need a DJ. You call him yourself, hook up with him on Facebook. Don't ask me for nothing. Don't call me, what's that lady name from Airbnb? I need to, no. Did you see that offering we just made? Are you in or are you in the way? Is the question. So I can't really say for legal reasons, I can't tell you the exact date, and I can tell you this very soon, but I can't tell you what that offering is going to be yet. When we are able to say it, trust me, I'll be blowing that horn as loud as I can.
Is that roundabout?
There is. Actually, I'll say, I'll kill it off the hook. So we're one of the test cases with the Illinois crowdfunding law.
Okay.
So with Illinois, now realize, crowdfunding's been around for a few years. If I wanted an accredited investor, someone that made $250,000 a year for the last 2 years, had $1 million net worth, I could have gotten them all day, every day, for the last 100 years, actually. So the thing that makes the Illinois crowdfunding rule a bit of a nuance is that it lets anyone that's non-accredited put money up to $5,000 per person. So when we do I can't tell you how much we're raising, I can't tell you when we're raising it, but I can tell you it's going to be between 500 and 5,000, and everybody in between.
Now, how many people in this room right now, and don't lie because I know the holiday's coming up, got $500 that you can see value in creating that 37 jobs in your community off just that one property? How many people would be willing to do something like that? Believe me when I tell you, it's worth that. But this project goes, he gave this example of this one property, but we've got this drawn out exponentially greater than that. The impact of this is going to be enormous. And when we do that, look for us. So this is our last event, and this is the last SBAC event for the year, because in December we kind of leave everybody to go out and be with your families or what have you. But you can look for information about special events that we're going to be doing to present this project back to the general public, and other projects that we'll be working with people on to help them bring to the general public, and just make you aware. So there are no more excuses, and that's why I want people to stop focusing on this presidential crap. It's not to say that that's a distraction and that there's nothing for you to be concerned about. But I'll tell you, like Morpheus told them in the Matrix when they were in the cave that time. He said, for all these years, in our case, 400 years, we've been having this war with these people who've been oppressing us, who've been holding us back. But after 400 years, the thing that matters most is that you're still here. And you still got an opportunity to fight and get out of it. But if you choose not to, then it's up to you. So now, the other point I made was this. The same community, the same people who own stores and shops and everything in our community right now, this law is accessible to them too. So they can use it to buy more of your community if you choose not to. So if you look at this 5 years from now, and we look at that and we still got nothing, we got nobody to blame but ourselves. We're going to open the floor back up now for questions. All right, Joe Perry.
The question that I had actually would be to both of you, but I think you probably would have the answer in Kate. Is the Airbnb restricted to single-family homes, or would it be?
No, so it's not restricted to single-family homes. However, understand, because I don't want anybody to get in trouble in doing this, right? So my property, I live in an awesome place, a lot of space, 2 floors, 2 bedrooms, blah, blah, blah. And I'm rarely there because of my job. So I want to Airbnb it out. Someone just got evicted out of my building for doing it. You're in a private contract, maybe an HOA or something along those lines. We're not going to encourage you to violate it, but if you did, I'm not going to know, to be quite honest. So that's going to be between you and whoever you're contracting with, and you can, so if you're in a 3-flat building and you're on 1, then you can Airbnb it out as long as there's no housing restrictions. Now, what I would encourage everybody to do, quite honestly, is if your homeowners insurance association does not allow it or doesn't want it, rethink that. and understand what the issue is.
So the bottom line is that it has to be homeowner occupied.
Yes, for better or worse. So like if you're gone, you can still give out the whole property.
Okay.
So you don't have to be in the property, but yes.
Right. Okay. Any other questions, sir?
Yeah, MK, all I know is what I read in the Tribune.
Yeah.
Every morning, and it looked like it was almost like, I mean, I read it. but-
Yeah.
And you're on the inside and it's going, okay? But after reading this morning, other than my friend invited me here, I wanted to find out about it, and I read it, I said, man, this is gonna be an interesting conversation. You know, the Tribune article this morning in the business?
No, I've literally been in meetings all day, so
Oh,
I have not.
Well, we've got it on, she found it on.
Okay, so what's the topic or what's the issue?
It was on, what's the title?
Well, there's a group of
Yes.
individuals.
I need to address this.
A group of individuals.
That is not Airbnb.
It's not Airbnb.
There are, okay, and you'll see photos of Airbnb present right there. There are 2 lawsuits that are currently pending against the current home sharing law that I am actively negotiating. There are 2 groups out there that feel that the law is illegal. I am not you guys' lawyer, so I'm not gonna give you a legal opinion. If they prevail on those lawsuits, then it is possible that Airbnb, HomeAway, and all these other platforms cannot be restricted at all. I mean, it's your property, it's your house, and that's one of the arguments out there, right? We are not a part of that. Some people who were a part of Airbnb have pulled away. They feel that any regulation is too much. That's fine, and there are lawsuits moving forward. I anticipate many more lawsuits coming out, to be quite honest. That is not a part of Airbnb. There is an alderman who constantly tie us to that. He'll use our name as if we're a part of it. But I have to clarify that every week, like when I'm at City Hall. This is not my lawsuit. I'm not a part of it. Nobody in my organization is a part of it. And while you may see pictures of people with Airbnb shirts on, they were some of our best hosts who don't want any regulation. So now they've switched to other sides, and those are their pictures, their properties. So, but we are not a part of either of those lawsuits.
Sean?
I'm just curious as to how stringent the regulations are. Like, say, what if I live in a 6 flat all by myself? No one else lives in the building.
On the record, especially since we're recording, I cannot give legal advice to anybody in this building. Most importantly, I think that's an awesome idea, and I think that's what you should aspire to. That is one of my personal goals, to own a 6 flat, and Airbnb out the entire thing, and travel the world. But there are plenty realists, and I say that half jokingly, but there have been, even in the trip, there have been a couple of articles of some younger people. There's one girl who's been traveling the world. I don't even think she has a job. I mean, just off Airbnb. I mean, I don't Airbnb it out, but you can find reasonable places to stay around the world that are Airbnbs. There's a beautiful place I'm going to try and stay in. It's just $22 a night in Costa Rica, and outstanding. Very, very affordable if you go to Airbnb.com.
I was gonna just say real briefly, and I know we're all sitting here kind of networking. There was a young lady in the back with all pink.
Yes.
Pam McWhorter. I keep using her maiden name. I've known her too long. I know her one name ago. So she actually currently, if you're saying to yourself, you know what, I'm all in, the chips are in. She actually, I know for a fact, we were talking about this before. She actually has an 8-bedroom house right now that's already made money with Airbnb. That's for sale. I think she may have some flyers on it. If you guys want to talk to her, at least meet her. You know, and at least that'll be your Kickstarter into.
Is that listed with me? No? We need to talk to you about that. All right.
There you go. There you go.
$80,000 a year.
Oh,
There you go.
say that again?
It's bringing in $80,000 a year. Has a live-in property manager that lives in the property for free.
$80,000 a year? Okay. Wow.
Across the street from my house.
Oh, okay.
I know the property, I know the home.
Right. Did you have a question, Lee? Were you going to say something?
Yeah, wasn't the city trying to push some kind of legislation saying that if you own a multi-unit building, you can only rent out a certain portion of it? Like 75% or 60% or something like that?
So some things just haven't been finalized. That's the best answer I can give you. Maybe
So they're still trying.
there's And a lot of things might have to be discussed when we're not recording as well.
Yeah, so we're gonna end that right now, so we can
Yes,
get
ma'am.
real up in here. We're gonna end that recording right now, so we can